Welcome to Pantheism TV. I'm your host, Guyus, and with me is a fellow pantheist and author, Waldo Nuesta. And he has written such books as Birding in the Face of Terror, Beyond These Four Walls, The Peasant and the King, The Even Better News, an Avant-Garde Manifesto, and more recently, I and I, a perennialist theory of reincarnation and cyclical time, which is very fortuitous because that's basically the topic we're going to be covering today. Like life after life, cyclical time, and reincarnation. And let me get a closer image of his more recent book. Let's see if my mouse will cooperate. Let's see. Here we go. And this, I'm currently reading this myself, and I can honestly say, after reading much of this, that if anyone's interested in reincarnation, this is something I can definitely honestly recommend because it's got a lot of interesting, unique thoughts, in my opinion, unique views. Things that I don't think I normally hear people even talk about. So it's fascinated me, the chapters that I've read so far. And let me go ahead and give a quick little shout out to my own book, The Forever All. I've discussed reincarnation somewhat in there, and you know what I think happens to us after we die. But if you really want to know my detailed views on reincarnation, I have a video that's within a playlist of this channel called, I think it's called Pantheism. Do I believe in reincarnation? In fact, I'll show you right quick. The thumbnail looks very similar to that, with the text put up there. But yeah, I talk all about my views on reincarnation there. And I also have a blog site where I have the same post in written form. So let me pull up here. One of the things I wanted to quickly mention and ask you about is I've noticed that on Facebook groups and on YouTube about certain things, when I see what pantheists, when it comes to reincarnation, it seems like most pantheists in those groups don't believe in reincarnation. Has that been your impression that most, I don't know if it's 50-50 or if most pantheists kind of stay away from that because I think it's too close to the Abrahamic view, have you got that impression?
Yeah, I'd say we're probably in the vast minority.
Yeah.
Certainly among Western modern pantheists. If you look at it from a more historical context, I'd say probably not. I think it's somewhat of a lost theological art outside of Hinduism and Buddhism, but it's something I've come to feel very deeply about. So I really want to generate the kind of ideas that at least get people thinking about it.
Yeah. I was a little surprised about that when I just kind of got that vibe from pantheists in the pantheist groups. But I can respect that. They usually want more hardcore evidence, and I can respect that to a point, to a degree. As philosophers, though, I kind of like to think that we would be given the freedom to kind of step back and try to look and predict what the overall jigsaw puzzle is, even though not all the provable pieces are in place. To kind of take a leap somewhat. As long as rationale is involved, logic and reason, and it's at least based on some evidence, because I don't like to just come up with ideas or beliefs right out of a vacuum, and I know you don't either. So we kind of like to have something that leads us to that view.
My sense as a pantheist is more informed by perennialism. So I don't feel beholden to any particular kind of pantheist theology. I'm more about the whole buffet. And
yeah, fortunately, it's a very broad umbrella term that, because we all each have our tailored views of pantheism. And so you're going to have one camp that doesn't believe in any kind of afterlife, and then you're going to have, those like us who certainly do.
Yeah.
I'll show something. I can't remember where I got it, and you can remind me where I found this. It's maybe your website. Let me I'll remove the logo. I can only think of death as what happens to a character in a play when the curtain falls, not an experience of the actor. And I love that metaphor. Go ahead and maybe kind of explain for those who might not get the metaphor there, just a little bit of what you're saying there, because I thought that was a great analogy.
Well, the distinction between the character and the actor is in very general terms. The actor is the durable self, as opposed to the temporary.
Right, that's exactly right. I was hoping you were going to say that, because there were some times where I wasn't always clear on your view on that. But the character in the play is the impermanent version of you, and then there's the more permanent, cosmic, oceanic version of you that you kind of often talk about. And one is, and in fact, I actually believe, I don't know in full detail what you think on this, but I actually believe that we will have an opportunity to be casted into every role in this grand stage play that we find ourselves in, that we will have an opportunity to be every character in this grand story, in the big wheel, and to experience all possible experiences, and the good and the bad. So it's not all good, but all those, and so it kind of all balances out in the end, like once everybody has had their cycle. Yeah, let me. Oh, my mouse is sure. Enlightenment. This is something that was also in your book. Enlightenment is when the wave realizes it is the ocean. That's by Thich Nhat Hanh, who said that. That was like one of my favorite quotes that I saw in your book so far. And it's one of the. I remember that expression, that quote from years ago, and it resonated with me personally because I actually I've used a very similar analogy. This, for example, me, Guy, and you, Waldo, that's the wave, but we're ultimately connected to this bigger ocean, which is kind of the truer you. And so, or this is how I interpreted it. So the little wave that I am, realizes it's really it's all connected ultimately. That I am the ocean, I am the all, kind of a thing, which I loved. But in the next quote, I had a little bit of an issue with, and it's not your quote. It's in your book, but it's by Walter Russell. In fact, I can actually put these up for people to see. There it is. The universe exists solely of waves of motion. There exists nothing other than vibrations. The only thing that does kind of bother me about that, just as I'm a dialectic monist, as I think you know, dualistic monist. I do believe that there's the totality of it all, the unification of it all, but that you can kind of that it can be differentiated to us perceivers as it's presented to us. We can see the two sides of the same coin. So when I think of all vibrations, and I've sometimes heard people say it's all energy, to me, I need for them to at least say, what's vibrating, what's, and you discuss this quite a bit in chapter 1, which I loved, by the way, or it's part 1. You talk about waves of energy, And I have finally narrowed down, if I ever want to explain to somebody what is energy, it's basically matter in motion. And so now we can debate, well, what is matter? What is that really? What is that? Um, but when you have something that vibrates or moves or that propagates energy, like you gave the example of a transverse wave that perpendicularly transmits energy, and then you discuss patterns of energy or energetic patterns. If it's all like this one thing, or let's say if it's all in the mind, because some people will say it's all mental, it's all in the mind, I would at least say that there has to be rules and has to be laws, like preordained laws, and it's to the point that it's just as though there is the physical. So whatever matter is, that which is moving. So what would you say about that distinction? Like, when you talk about, or when there's just all waves or all energy or all mind, what shapes that, or what influences it, or what is there any kind of separation, or that which governs that which moves? I know that's kind of a mouthful, but yeah. How would you characterize that when we think of it all as vibrations? Do you believe that it's all like if we talk about it's all waves? Because I actually, to a point, I do believe that we can examine everything as waves, but it's this weird duality with me when it comes to matter in motion or energy, and it's just kind of like this lawful thing. Because I know we could always keep trying to peer into what is the physical. In fact, I did a whole video on that too, the physical versus the non-physical. Yeah, you can finally just drive yourself crazy, finally, trying to actually hone in on, zero in on what exactly that is, the physical. Because we're trying to establish what medium this all is. What is this physical thing that we're all part of? And you are trying to convey that even though you're local, I have what's called that local version of you, and then there's that cosmic, more permanent version of you. I was just trying to zero in. If you don't believe in any kind of duality at all, like there is no real physical, and if that's the case, what is that? Is that like this is resistance? I can't put my finger through it, and there's a reason why. A lot of people will say that if it's all mental, then could we just do whatever we want? You know what I mean? Like, could I do whatever? So
yeah. I'm not an idealist. I believe in atoms.
Okay.
And so what that section about the metaphor about the ocean in part 1, and that comes from it was something I read about 10 years ago by the author Henry Beston, who is considered a natural pantheist. And he wrote a description of the waves that he observed from the beach at Cape Cod. And he talked about how, the water molecules
I remember reading
are mostly moving up and down on a vertical plane. But what we are watching when we watch a wave come in from the shore is an energetic pattern of that moving across the horizontal plane of the water. Yeah. And I also used the example of the wave in a baseball.
The sports. Yeah, that's my favorite.
Clearly, because you watch people stand up and go like this, and then they sit down, and nobody's actually moving side to side. Right. You watch the pattern go across the stands.
Yeah, it propagates the energy, but the physical, even though it's going vertical, what happens perpendicular is the transmission of that energy.
The point there is that what we observe are the patterns. Okay, the physical exists, but that's not what we are observing per se. It's not separate from what we are observing, and that's where the non-duality kind of stays put and still frames the concept, because they're not separate, but we're not actually. That's where the idea of what I call subject constancy comes in. The wave itself is the subject; it's the energetic pattern, and it's.
Yeah, have you ever seen like one of my favorite things I've ever seen is like an eddy of leaves dancing in the wind, like just a little tornado on the ground, a little thing that dances around. Yeah, and so you have the leaves, the physical, but it's showing the signature of the energy, the energetic patterns, kind of a thing.
That's another great example. A tornado or a swirl of air like that. It's not one thing moving from here to there. It's a pattern of energy where the air is constantly coming in and moving out, but you see with this one pattern moving horizontally across the ground. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you could point at as examples of what we. What would
you say about what that actual physical is? Like, so the people in the stand that go up and down, the ocean molecules that go up and down. When you think about things that are physical, how do you see that in your? What do you think the ultimate truth is of that which is physical? It's a lawful thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the best way.
Very tiny manifestations of God.
Okay. Of the maybe the essence of God.
Right.
Of the all and all, the ocean, that oceanic essence.
Yes.
Here's I have these little notes that I reminding myself. Where does your physical body truly begin and end? And I'll just show the next one. We've kind of talked about this. Ultimately, it's all connected. The entire physical universe is our body. And that was one of the reasons that kind of led me to the view that reincarnation must exist, because, yes, this will die. My impermanent version, my human vessel, will age and die and rot away. But that inner passenger, that's me, kind of along for the ride, that's part of my cosmic self, that truer version of me. And so my true body is the entire infinite universe, and that's not going to die. That's, in fact, I don't think that's ever going to die. It just seems like my mental perceiving mind will go from one position to another. In fact, when you talk about energetic patterns, I actually don't believe that the pattern ever truly fully flattens out or dissolves or dissipates into nothingness. I believe there will always be some kind of little, the pattern doesn't necessarily get as complex. Like, for example, when we become human, that pattern, that energetic pattern, is quite complex, but it can be a lot more simplified than that. Now, of course, I think that our memories, if not right away, eventually we'll lose our memories and our identity. Once we die, once our human vessel dies, I do believe that we will eventually lose all of our memories of who we once were. So in that sense, there is a death, and that is unfortunate. Although some people might want to forget, because there are certain things about their lives that they don't want to remember. But to me, we are each kind of a part of an unending continuum. So I know a lot of people kind of think of us, each of us, as kind of like this finite thing with finite parts, kind of like a chair or a car, where you could take those parts apart and then the car is no more. But I believe that we're part of this continuum that can never truly be extinguished or dissipated. In fact, I actually believe that scientists might one day detect that separation. I won't necessarily go into this right now, but I have 3 different theories of how that transition happens. One is kind of a ethereal mitosis. once this human vessel dies, or it might be like a microscopic thing that whenever the system finally reaches this critical point where the system is not going to be able to facilitate the perceiving mind, it kind of gags and regurgitates the, you in, in some form, whether it's ethereal separation or some tiny microscopic thing that separates from us, or it could be, the third one is some type of quantum leap, for the lack of a better term, where you snap into another host of whatever zygote or embryo or seed is waiting to receive that impulse. Scientists have actually detected, like when the sperm reaches the egg, a kind of electrical pulse or turning on kind of a thing. So who knows? Maybe that's when that's happening. I don't know. But I don't pretend to know exactly how that transition takes place. So I was just curious about what you think actually happens to your perceiving mind when the local Waldo dies, or maybe you don't have a theory on that yet. I don't want to put you in a corner and say that you have one, but
this may be hard to, this is one of those things that's probably a little difficult to describe without a lot of buildup, but we don't have the luxury of that. The will to exist, mine will to exist, that decided outside of time to enter the stream of time as Waldo or as Gaius. Simply leaves the body, leaves time again. That's the idea that I get into in part 3, I think, in more detail, that with as a cyclical model instead of linear. Death basically happens at the same moment that we're born. As trippy as that is to think about, and
you said think of time like a roller coaster,
right?
I don't know if you're kind of going along that time, but you're talking about that cyclical thing where you end up back where you started, kind of a thing,
right?
But when you say that, are you talking about the grand wheel of life, where all the characters that you might play, or do you mean within? Well, I took it to mean within the grand scheme, within the grand story, that cycles. But you also might be talking about another type of cycle of what happens to you specifically after you die.
The individual life cycle. I mean, everything that you can point to and everything that you can identify has some kind of cyclical pattern, whether it's an insect that lives for 24 hours or a universe, anything in between. So it is all happening. I mean, Earth, had a definite, formation, a time that it was formed, and it will have a time that it no longer, when it dissolves. So there are cycles happening within cycles. I think that the important concept is fractalization, because that's where you get the idea of something coming from a whole source, containing all of the essence of its source.
You touched on one of the reasons why I also believe in reincarnation, and that is because, as I put up here, life seems to be very cyclical in a variety of ways. There's the water cycle, the rock cycle, the sun.
Everything in nature cycles.
The season, the planets, and then there's also all these interesting metaphors in nature, like the caterpillar that becomes the butterfly, the crab that moves from one shell to the next, kind of a thing. And it just seems like if you read the pages of life and of nature, nature's trying to show us that there's this continuation. And I've noticed that nothing seems to ever be absolute in nature. So there's always like this quasi thing. So there's not this absolute death. There's, it's this in between kind of a thing. Um, in fact, a lot of people often say to me that that's wishful thinking. And my answer to that is what I often tell them is they're partly correct, because I would be lying if I said that I don't wish that it somewhat continues. There's a part of me that does wish that, but sometimes there's also a part of me that wishes it would all just stop, because as we both know, life is not always sunshine. It's not always a bowl of cherries. And so it's filled with pain and suffering and fear and sadness. In fact, some of my views related to reincarnation are actually very unpleasant. So it's not something you would wish for. And part of that is experiencing certain lives and certain pain that is actually quite scary, quite frightening. But I believe it because my rational mind, I always try to separate my emotions of what I wish was true and what I would want to be true. I try to remove that from the equation and try to responsibly, gather certain evidence, and then that's why I believe what I believe. So, what do you tell people when they tell you wishful thinking or that's fantasy? Because I know you kind of touched on that in your book a little bit. I'm sure you would think the same. Basically, that I would, because I know you well enough by now, to know that you're responsible enough not to just believe in what you would like the truth to be. You're trying to actually analyze it on several levels. In fact, you even get kind of scientific about it, and that's kind of what I like to do. I try to think of it in almost scientific terms of what's actually happening. It's not something that's just magical.
I'm a very nuts and bolts kind of thinker. And
right.
I like to I go into probably more detail than most readers want in some cases, but I think you said it well. I think there are many times and when you probably would think, why the F would I want to do any of this again? And then you come up with reasons, you come up with things. And those are the things that bring you back. Those are the things that I've come to believe over the last several years, very much that what disturbs the peace, so to speak, in the absolute sense, what gets the illusion of Maya started is really just will and desire, and we become agents of desire, and that's basically what we aren't doing this by accident. In other words, we're not being punished.
Think about what shapes that desire. You're talking about desire to want to be, but there's that which stimulates that desire, that shapes that desire. And I would say that it's the way the universe works. The universe, I know people don't like this comparison. I think of it as, I'm almost kind of like a puppet, but it's a very divine mechanism, the way the universe works, and that it stimulates us. It stimulates those energetic patterns in certain ways to want to live. Actually, kind of reminds me of what our eye does. An iris, when there's too much sunlight and it stimulates, it causes it to, pull in. There's just certain things in nature that tweak us into I don't know, certain modes. But it's always kind of been written to function that way. In fact, that brings me to another point, which is the universe, the mechanisms of the universe, which even caused us to exist in the first place, that brought us into being born and that brought my perception here. Those are some amazing mechanisms. So it wouldn't surprise me a bit if the universe found mechanisms to preserve us in some sense and to repeat that. In fact, my grandpa, Jack Wilson, he used to always say, if it could happen once, it could happen again.
Yeah, there's
So,
some good quotes about that. That it's no more badly paraphrasing, but it's no more unusual to be born twice than to be born once.
yeah.
You know,
In fact,
it
Alan Watts kind of talked about that a little bit. You
might have.
know,
Yeah, I think he used that at one point, at least. Yeah.
yeah. If we come, in fact, Peter Moriarty kind of shares this. I think he shares this somewhat view with me that there's the ground state, and this is what he called it, the ground state, and I often called it the rock, the level of the rock. But
Hmm.
it's when you talk about that complexity and it becomes less and less complex, it's finally going to hit a ground state. I actually don't believe it ever fully reaches the ground state, ground zero. I always believe that when it gets to a certain point, that stimulates the universe, causes that to, regurgitate back into more complex forms. That's just the nature of it. So I
Hmm.
don't know that it ever fully flattens out. But I do know that Peter seems to mention the ground state, and I think you have mentioned that ground state in this book. Uh, in fact, this will let me go ahead and before I forget. You wrote selfhood is the fifth dimension. Uh,
Yeah.
um, oh, and then let me do the other one. Let's see. The dimension of selfhood is present wherever an energetic pattern takes shape within four-dimensional space. Um, and when
Yeah,
you were
there's
talking about the first
a lot of
dimension,
panpsychism behind that idea. Yeah. Hmm.
uh, and wasn't that kind of a non? It seemed like you were kind of getting on the idea of a non-materialistic, all mental kind of dimension or state.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's what I was trying to fully understand your meaning on that. When you say it's all mental, do you believe that you can view the all and all in those strictest terms, or that it's all mental? Which again, I'm okay with as long as there's rules that govern certain things, because uh, without those rules, for example, the physical laws and how that all works. Um,
Oh, it's okay.
you see what I
Sure, I
mean?
can address that. Yeah. Um, it. What I'm saying there is that the fifth dimension is a mental experience. There's still the three physical dimensions and the fourth dimension of time, which makes individuation possible. And when you have the individual energetic pattern that has the capability to have a fully subjective experience, like when you have something, a creature like a human who realizes the I am, then their sense of self becomes something that's not just static. It's something that can you can basically um, zoom out or pan in, so to speak, along your whether it be your particulate matter of your body or the all, as you're talking
So
about.
when you zoom out,
Hmm.
um, let's say you zoom out of the particular and the impermanent, and
Hmm.
you're observing it, and you're probably now in the state of the more permanent version of you, the universal you. Um, um, that is there, like, I know you kind of talk about time going in and out of, like, your basically you always view yourself of having a nucleus. Your perception of the all. There's the nucleus of you, the apex, the keystone.
Hmm.
So you're always remaining as the keystone out of all this, whether it's an ocean of waves or not. Um, and then, like, even if you're observing, like you described, you did a great job on describing this dream you had, where you were observing your past selves, and um, and you were kind of outside of time, at least as far as Waldo would normally experience time.
Right. Hmm.
Now, I'm sure there had to be some kind of duration of where you were in the outer, observing state. Of course, there's some kind of duration there. I don't know, but there's still there's still never there's still a kind of a passenger that's you, that perceiving version of you, that even though you left. So whatever that is, that can maybe move around freely. I don't know if you think it can move around freely or pop up anywhere it needs to. But that's what must survive if Waldo dies. Somehow that cosmic version of you, that more permanent version of you, and one involves constant change. Like right now, my molecules are constantly moving around, and energies are coming in and going, and so this is constantly changing.
Right.
And so, in fact, if I was to, take this pencil and break it, I never really broke that pencil that I was holding a while ago, because so many things have changed about what that pencil was. The only thing that remains constant is the representation. What this series of changes represents. So,
the pencil
there's
is a wave, just like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I was saying the pencil is a wave. Yep.
Yes. In fact, it's a series of waves, and in fact, no matter how many, when we look at the ocean and we see all those changes and we see all the waves, and even though it's constantly changing, we could still look at it and say, well, there's the ocean. That doesn't change. And so, so this version of me is constantly changing. It will decay. It will age. It will die. But then that more permanent version of you, this is what I believe, that the universe as a whole does not change, not even a little bit. It doesn't evolve. It can't ever become corrupt or damaged. It's like this beautiful tapestry that will always exist and always has exist, and it's unchanging. And then that, of course, is supposed to be you. Now you may be experiencing the all, as Carl Sagan might say. You're the universe experiencing itself. And so, you may be, as Waldo, experiencing yourself from that position, that unique position in time and space. But you are the all. That kind of reminds me of this. I'll show you this one line in a movie, one of my favorite movies. You can't step on the same piece of water twice. And that was in the movie Circle of Iron. And Heraclitus is the one who basically said that, and it was more accurately quoted as, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he is not the same man." Because each moment that passes by, again, changes us. And even in the briefest of moments, I don't care if it was within a millisecond, changes always can be found to take place, within the universe, the way things just the way it functions. And so it's almost kind of hard to ever put your finger on saying that anything is constant. But you kept going in your book, trying to show that, yes, even though those things aren't constant, there is a more constant essence of you that does survive death. If I interpreted that correctly, if I read that correctly. Here's when you discuss energetic patterns and interiority. If you can maybe describe that second one a little bit. You want to maybe just briefly explain that a little bit?
That's what that pertains to, to the fifth dimension and of selfhood. What we're able to do as cognizant beings, to be able to for the wave to be able to realize that it's the ocean, and essentially.
Okay, here's something I gotta show this. It's impossible for something to ever come from nothing, and for something to ever become nothing. That's the ancient Greek philosopher Parmenides. One of my favorite quotes. And that, so it pleased me when I saw that people that long ago had that view, had that conception, that because I finally reached that point where how could anything just spontaneously come or come from nothingness? And that's why I always say that our perceiving mind is part of a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we didn't come from nothing either. So we're not going to go into nothingness, but we also didn't come from nothing. When we were first born in this one, I just don't believe that. It's now harder for me to believe, just based on all the research and contemplating I've done on this subject. It's now harder for me to believe that there's not some kind of continuation and that we didn't have some type of before. And the big question is, why don't we remember our past life or lives? Now, some people do, but my theory on that as to why we don't remember like a more detailed human version, it's very unlikely that I was I was this complex and that I was a human in my previous life. I would bet that the human, and even being intelligent enough to have these kind of thoughts, that's kind of a rare thing within the whole wheel. So it's likely I was, I don't know, a moth or something, before. So there's going to be a likelihood of a series of past lives where you're just not that you're not that conscious in those lives, and so after that many lifetimes and after that much time, you just finally forget all that. But again, some people feel that they remember an essence, sometimes an emotional memory of a past life, or actually they actually remember their past lives. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. It's interesting, there are some cases, though. There was this one in particular that really impressed me. It was a guy who actually remembered being murdered by a certain, I don't know, it was a farmer or something in a past life. And he was able to actually get the authorities and lead them to this guy, to this place. And they found the body buried. And wow, if that was a hoax, that was a very elaborate one.
Yeah,
that was really something. But it wouldn't surprise me, though, if I was not a human or any kind of advanced, intelligent being of any kind in my previous life. So now I hope to be in my next one, if there is a next one. When you mentioned the tree of life is within you, I normally think of, I've often said this, I've written about it, that you are the tree. I mean, the infinite cosmic tree of life. Not that it's just within me, but I am you are the tree. But you said tree of life, so that may be a little different, because I think of like the cosmic tree, the infinite universe is like this cosmic tree. So again, as we've discussed, we are the infinite ocean, or, you are the tree. But when you say the tree of life is within you, you want to kind of express what you kind of mean by that?
Just really another metaphor for the fifth dimension.
Okay. Yeah,
on,
it was
drawing on the what is used in Kabbalah.
Okay.
Primarily. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had a near-death or out-of-body experience?
The closest
that dream you
had is that dream, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that was massive. That was something.
Yeah, that was actually. Yeah, that was pretty. I've had some lucid dreams and some out-of-body experiences while dreaming. And it sounds like you had a pretty interesting one on that. Here's something I'll bring up. AI, and I actually believe, I was mentioning how I think that one day scientists might succeed at not only detecting the separation of something from the body that might even one day be able to capture it, encapsulate it, or communicate with it, interface with it. In fact, that would make a neat movie. That's a good movie idea. But yeah, have a device of some kind to capture that separation and then to finally communicate with it. I'm actually of the opinion that scientists might get good enough, or engineers, to engineer a device that can tease out a perceiving being from the oceanic fabric, so to speak. What do you think about that? Do you think that's like, because like if you created a device that could all of a sudden have emotions and perceive, and you gave it the physicality. I mean, imagine if we had to serve as a host, is what I'm getting at, like a new host. Like, wouldn't it be nice if one day in the far future they can create these very sophisticated android bodies, and when somebody's dying on the gurney, they could make the transition. It's not a copy. That's important. It's not just a digital, scanning the brain. I'm talking about the actual whatever separates and then is implanted into this, and then that can wake up. That android can wake up, and he can be like, okay, let's keep doing this, and keep going. It's kind of like capturing a soul, a soul catcher, so to speak.
It sounds like reinventing the wheel to me, to be honest. And it sounds more like about preserving the personality rather than the soul.
Yeah, you were talking about, that's a good thing to kind of cover. You believe that the personality, I mean, do you believe that also changes? Because when I think about my personality, that's based on my memories, my experiences, which will eventually fade. And so that personality is constantly changing. There's the person I was when I was 3 years old. I'm very different from that person. I mean, there's a little, smidgen that's still like an echo that's still there, that's still the same.
Your soul constancy, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you define those differently? There's the soul, and then there's the personality. That's tricky.
Well, again, it sort of goes back to the character and the actor. Waldo is a character that is being played only once, and will die with the body. But the actor, the actual I am, like that's
Right.
kind of in here, so to speak.
The capital I am.
Yeah. Is going to do something else. Is going to do something. It's going to follow its will into another, and to generate another potential being, and become that. Now, I could come back. The Nietzsche's. Have you read about Nietzsche's idea of the eternal recurrence?
I can't remember.
Something to look up.
I've read things about him, but I don't know about that.
It's more of a thought experiment than a theory. It's not, and it's not something to take terribly seriously. But his idea was that kind of a thought experiment to generate the feeling in you that you love your life so much that you would come back and do it all over again, if you could. If you had to do it, indefinitely, live the kind of life that you would want to do indefinitely. I actually believe that that's on the table, so to speak. But why would I? Why would I want to come back and do all that again?
But isn't there that which shapes that personality or your desires, and does that change? Are you saying that the personality doesn't change, or that it does?
I'm saying the personality is the costume that you take off and leave behind and move on.
Okay. I was hoping you would say that, because that I would agree with for sure.
Right.
Okay, yeah, and then so that does change. I mean, personality is constantly changing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big fat
Yeah.
yes.
And that's what I mean, the soul isn't different than the personality, but the soul is also not the thing that I'm talking about that reincarnates. It's the if you remember from part 2, it's the pneuma.
Now I only got part into part 2. And I started around.
It's laid out pretty clearly there. Yeah, I think you'll like that chapter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
Um,
you believe that something slips out and then slips in, or you don't. It seemed like you used the analogy of an envelope. Um, unless I read that
it's
somewhere.
never like truly in per se, like a letter in an envelope. It's more that it becomes this energetic pattern by coalescing the trillions of cells and all the neural connections that it takes to make a person. And as those things kind of circulate in and out of the pattern and everything, but it keeps the constancy of Waldo or Gaius, and that is what the soul is while we live. And then when that pattern ends, that will that created all that now has somewhere else to go.
Okay,
And
the will.
the
Yeah,
will.
the will
Yeah.
created that. Okay, so that continues on.
That's
that moves
what.
on.
Yep.
And Waldo gets left behind, or it's kind of a shell. I think of it as a shell that gets left behind.
It's a character that somebody else could come along and play. And that sounds, it sounds kind of facetious and with just dropping it in like that. But that's
no. I actually believe that not only will there be others who will have the opportunity to be me, to play me. I believe there's an infinite series, just because I believe the universe is infinite. I believe there's actually an infinite series of me right now, and that he never really does die. Like, for example, that which is Madonna or Elvis. You go to some other planet, I promise you, you're going to find their Elvis and their Madonna and their each. And so I mean even quite specifically, I always think of the universe or all moments kind of like infinite frames of an infinite reel, a film reel, and they're always in place right now. Every frame is out there. Every frame exists. Every possible part of the story. And if you think of it as like, in Shakespeare's, all the world's a stage, that play is just like the film reel. Every moment, every possible moment, every possible character is constantly in place and constantly preserved. Nothing is ever truly lost. There will always be your Michael Jacksons, your Elvis Presleys, your Madonnas, whatever. All the main, and even everything in between. As I was saying, that we get to play every role. That means the lowest, nastiest little bug that will get squashed or eaten, to the most intelligent, wise king that will rule in maybe years of wealth and prosperity. So you're going to get an opportunity to have the highs and the lows of all the possible lives out there. At least that's what I'm thinking. If you think of it as an infinite reel. The nice thing about that is ultimately it all balances out. So if somebody's having like a really lousy life, and again, another thing that brings me back to thinking about there's got to be some kind of reincarnation is you think about a little gnat or a mosquito that as soon as he's born, he gets swatted. It's like, man, really? That was his the hand he got dealt, like what a horrible deal he got, and that's it forever and ever, never again. So yeah, that's just because you think about all these insignificant lives, that's just a horrible thing to think that. Now again, there's my emotions coming through, what I think would be horrible. I can never fully remove that always. But yeah, it just makes me think that what a shame if that does turn out to be true, that even brief little insignificant life, and that's it, and that's all that person gets, or that life form, that's all that little life form gets. That would be horrible. Real quick, I just wanted to quickly show some of these amazing pictures I found on the internet when I was, let me remove the, hang on. Let me remove the banner there, if I can find it. Let's see, there it is. Yeah. And then, okay, yeah, that one, I thought that was just amazing. And then here's something that I found on your site. It's not necessarily about reincarnation, but kind of. Souls tend to go back to who feels like home. I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was amazing. Here's one that I used for the thumbnail, which I thought was cool. This one's cool. That's the Da Vinci Man.
Macros. Yep.
Yeah, that one's really cool. Now this one, I like this one because it kind of conveys a, kind of like that spiral storyline. I thought, and here's another one.
I used that on my website back when I didn't worry about using copyrighted material.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, here's my, just to see more up close. That was what I used for my book. That's just kind of showing how all the elements of the universe come together to create not only me in the physical sense, but my perceiving mind. So I think I remember when I was shortly out of high school, I came to that I had that epiphany, that realization that if everything, because it takes the whole package in order for any one thing to be possible, in order for any of it to work. It's amazing that it requires the whole universe in order to create even one perceiving mind. And so no matter what happens to that physical body, that perceiving mind is always going to be there to some degree. And here's another piece of artwork that kind of conveys the cycle, the cyclical, it's the eternal flame kind of a thing. And I put this one up. You talked about waves a lot, waves of energy, which that chapter just fascinated me. The yin and the yang, and then that real quick. I guess. Oh, we got some comments. Let me look at the comments section. Carl Sagan. Research on. Yeah. Yeah. Love Carl Sagan.
And Whitman.
In quantum mechanics, it's possible to separate a particle mass from its properties, the quantum Schrödinger-Cat phenomenon. Yeah, I normally don't, like there's some issues I have with quantum mechanics, quantum theory. But
I don't go to that very often just because I don't have the background. I don't want to pretend that I do,
Yeah, even the scientists, quantum theorists, they say if you really understand quantum theory, then you don't really understand it.
Really understand it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Basically, they don't fully get it. I've tried to research it a lot. There's just a lot of things that I disagree with, but like I know that there's a probability in the wave function when I just don't think that reality, like certain wave functions collapse and then certain things become real because we observed them and interacted with them. I agree that there's certain probability as to whether or not something will be here or there or what its momentum is. Yeah, we might not be able to ascertain that or know that knowledge, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't actually have an existence or a momentum. It's just that, we don't get to know that. So we have to use equations, probability equations to try to map out what's what.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing that just kind of reminded me of quantum mechanics is when I think about the third possibility of how the transition takes place, and that is when this system is finally shutting down, like if I'm suffocating or if I'm on fire, my mind is going to kind of do a quantum leap, kind of a thing. It's just the lack of a better term. It snaps into the next quadrant because I also believe that we're actually within an egg, a seed, infinitely so, an infinite series. Like, so sooner or later, I'm within a zygote or a baby floating in a womb. And so as soon as this mind decides it needs to leave, because this system's no longer facilitating or going to be able to accommodate it, it'll snap into that waiting room, so to speak. But again, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Certainly a lot easier to put into metaphors and especially in fiction is my forte. I don't. This is probably my first and last nonfiction book, but so yeah, it's a tough thing to nail down, and I think sometimes we do a disservice by trying to when we are. We can convey the reality of it better by creating analogies, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so, especially when we're talking about something as profound as reincarnation, we have to use kind of metaphoric language. I mean, we can sometimes talk about the science of it, which I would like to try to do more and more. In fact, I'd like to even create a mini series eventually on my other channel, my Guyus channel, because I wanted to go into great detail of what I actually think happens during the transition. And they're just theories, but they are at least based on how I think the universe operates. So it's not just completely just trying to make up whatever. There's at least some rhyme or reason to it. In your book, you said there is no where involved because selfhood is the first dimension that is entirely mental. So I'm just now reading it. I was looking at my notes. The capacity to experience it is created by the confluence of the three. It serves to remind the temporarily created, meaning that human version, I am, that is existential ground. It's existential ground. It's the I am, all capital letters. Yeah. There is something. Oh, I love this. This is a quote. I'm so glad I didn't forget I caught this. Interiority is by no means limited to humans and other animals. This is a quote from his book. It is, as you may have surmised, a beacon to the lost souls whose attention sits so far out on the crest of the wave that they forgot their oceanic truth and live in fear of the coming crash. I thought that was just artfully said. Let's see. The dimension of selfhood is present wherever. Oh yeah, the dimension of selfhood is present wherever an energetic pattern takes shape. Okay, yeah, I covered that one. Yeah, sir. Okay, this I had a little question about. It says, with a functional purpose to serve on behalf of all other patterns. In other words, interiority is universal and intentional. It is not an accident of biology, nor a mere consequence of natural laws. It is not an error or illusion, neither a boon nor burden to those being endowed with a complex state of self-awareness. That last part, would you be able to expand on that? Like, not a burden to those being endowed with a complex state of self-awareness. What exactly was not a boon nor a burden to those? Let's see. It is not an accident. Let's see.
I think what I was trying to address is the idea that that we are either being rewarded or punished by the process of reincarnation, by some, you know, imagined karmic authority, that really, I mean, any one being, you know, by the concept of interbeing, any one being is existing so that all others will exist too.
Aha.
Um,
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get people to think away from the idea of like, well, I got a better deal this life because I was good last time, you know. It's really not in service of a particular person. It's in service of the whole. And
Okay. That. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
for the sake of generating new experience, which
Yeah.
will then be used as a, you know, I do see there is still, you know, even though our own timelines are cyclical, there is still a certain momentum of the whole as well, as far as, you know, the known universe and our particular corner of it, you know, centered on Earth. We are still evolving. In other words, there is a linear evolution going on in which we are learning how to be better beings.
Now, do you mean that when each of us is through the human conduit or the local conduit, that's evolving to learn to be better and better?
Yes, I'm a big believer in teleology. I think that pantheism really throws out some really good baby with that one.
Right.
Baby and bathwater metaphor.
Right.
I think that's a really important thing that the theists have developed that we ignore at our peril. I think that there is a teleology to reincarnation.
Yeah.
Even
Well, yeah.
within an individual life. I mean, we're all we're all aspiring to figure this out to some degree, or you know, like learn how to ride the wave better. You know?
Yeah, I certainly believe it definitely has an influence. Like, for example, whoever I am thrusted into to be, or where I'm going to be afterwards, and after that, and then after that, it's all a chain of causation, and it's an influence. And
you don't get to bring the memories, because memory is a faculty of certain things that die, you know, in the body. But I do believe that we bring glimpses, and that we bring wisdom from one life to another, and we have to uncover it. It doesn't just, you know, grow like, you know, a head of hair or something. It's something you do have to cultivate with purpose and intention, but I think that we do draw from previous karmic experience. And
I'm still open to the part that we might, memories could maybe carry on somewhat, especially if what I believe, which is we will always be somewhat of the physical. We will. Now again, this is just me. I don't think that my perceiving mind will ever be a part of something that's just not of substance. I believe I'm a combination of the something and the nothing, and that the two can never be fully divorced. Like I just don't believe that I will be like this magical nothingness. So I mean, in that regard,
you know, like
what was that?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but if we could, we would be. I mean, we would be doing something a lot easier right now if we didn't have to do it through the physical.
Right. Yeah. So I think there's a room for me. I don't know for certain, but I leave the door open for the possibility that something even of the physical will separate, and in doing so, there will be somewhat of a backup of the memories, at least some essence or some, you know, and of course that will eventually fade or change or whatever from life to life. But yeah, I don't know the full extent of that, of course. I did want to.
You can uncover memories. I do want to I do want to make that clear because I think that that's something people need to realize too. I mean, that you can access some of the stuff.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
takes work. I mean, it's going to come, out of nothing.
Because knowledge is the foundation of wisdom. And so if you're talking about carrying on some of that wisdom, it has to be carried on in some way. It has to be communicated in some way. So something might get recorded. Obviously, something gets recorded on something as part of our being. It's recorded
Right.
onto our being. So that transitions, hopefully. Another question I had with a quote in your book, you say spirituality is not just a lifeline the I am throws to fish afraid of drowning in its holy waters, which I love that line, by the way. It is the lifeblood of the process whose up and down pulsations form the energetic patterns of everything that exists. It is an essential function of life itself. Now, you are referring to spirituality is the lifeblood. So what did you mean by spirituality? Did you mean the practice of being spiritual, or do you mean the ethereal essence of your spirit? I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
No, in that context, I was just talking about the wave mechanisms and how they generate,
Okay.
how they generate souls, basically.
Okay. Then I was trying to tack down exactly what the lifeblood of the process, who's up and down, but okay. Let's see. Just gonna see if there was any other. Oh yeah, that's that. Oh yeah, you said notice that I. You say notice that I didn't simply dissolve into the ocean and lose all sense of I am. Yeah. Once upon a time, this was my sole belief about death, and I wouldn't fault anyone who holds it to it now. Certainly one can make that conclusion from Thich Nhat Hanh statement about enlightenment. Let's see. Right, you don't simply dissolve into the ocean, the ocean, the cosmic self.
There's a cyclical pattern in the movement of the water when it reaches after the break and it rushes to the shore, it comes back down under and then comes back up and does the same kind of motion. It's sort of you could call it like the privilege of the water that happens to be by the edge of the shore, but it does tend to make that cyclical pattern that's easy to notice.
Yeah. And then here you say, when you were just now, I was trying to ask you earlier, what exactly how you define the soul? The energetic pattern is the soul. That's what you wrote. The energetic pattern is the soul. Okay. Just clear that up for everyone.
And there's a really good breakdown of that in part 2.
Yeah. In the book.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you actually went on to at first starting describing, it's kind of like the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel painting when God breathed life into Adam. The metaphor of breathing into his, what we think of, which was made from dust. That's the physical. That's the body, and what he breathed into him was the soul. I can't remember if you agreed with it or not, but you were kind of showing. Using that analogy and that illustration to kind of discuss that. All fascinated me how you were discussing that. Here's another good one. Everything that you have ever perceived with your senses, including you perceiving them, is an energetic pattern, a wave caused by fluctuations occurring at the simplest level of existence. The cause of these fluctuations is an impenetrable mystery. Yes, indeed. Let's see. And we're observing the patterns. Constant change at some point. Yeah, at some point in the future, the wave called Waldo Nuesta will simply have reached its golden shore or tapered out as the fans got, when you were talking about the baseball fans standing up in their seats and doing the wave, using that as an analogy, like they get tired finally. I actually laughed on that. That amused me. But yeah, they finally get tired of doing the wave. And so what happens, you're trying to illustrate that's the death of the local human you, the human Waldo. But you say, but I will still exist in some form or formlessness. I will have work to do. And then you say, key question then, am I saying that Waldo Noesta will survive the dissolution of his body and return in a different body? And you give the answer, no. That is what Cartesian dualism would have you think, but it is not what I mean. Waldo is not a person, but a personality. He is mortal. So his story will be told. So his story will be told once on this timeline and never again. I'd be better not to be too attached to him, or I will be filled with a sense of doom that pervades human life in linear time. A dilemma, yes. And it will remain so until I grasp the idea that I simply do not die with Waldo. I exist to live again. Okay, that was good. Just wanted to share that. When I came across chapter 4, Particle Man, Universe Man, and Person Man, that was all very, I haven't read it all, but that was good. That caught my attention. Let me swing back over. There we are. Okay. Okay, I guess we've gone a little over an hour, so we should wrap it up there. Do you have any last thoughts? Anything I missed? There's so much to cover on this topic.
I know we really could go on and on. I think we just have to do a part 2.
Yeah. And then maybe we'll bring in Peter Moriarty next time, because he does not believe in any form of reincarnation, if I understand that correctly.
I'd be thrilled to talk to you and Peter at the same time. Yep.
Do what?
I'd be thrilled to talk to both of you at the same time.
Oh,
I think
that'd be great. Yeah, if you'd like to come back, I would love to do that. So we might try to do that, set that up soon. To everyone who's either watching now or who may be watching later in the future, please go over to my new channel, Pantheism TV, and maybe subscribe to help the channel grow. And look in the description, because I have links to Waldo's books and his website and my blog site and things like that. So I guess maybe we'll wrap it up there. So as I often like to say, be balanced, and thanks for watching. And you go ahead and stay in the studio. Yeah. All right. I'll end the broadcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you.